Good morning and welcome to More Tea Minister. Today we are looking at something of a first for this channel. We are looking at what is technically a green tea. Specifically, we are looking at a genmaicha, which is a combination of green tea and toasted rice. This particular example is a sample, which is why it's relatively small. This came with a purchase which I've already mentioned on a post on this channel. So this is a sample, hence a small size, of Genmaicha from Postcard Teas. I'll just read out the details, then when we get to part 3 of the video, we'll explain more about them. This is Yakushima Genmaicha, Mr. Watanabe, Yakushima in Japan, best before November 2027, and there's more information available on the website, and that's what we are going to take a look at. So this is something of a first. It's a green tea, but it's not a green tea in the standard sense. It has this added element of being a genmaicha, a green tea combined with popped rice. So let's move on to part 2, and then part 3 where we'll talk more about the product. Hello again, welcome to part 2 of our video. We're looking at the unopened packaging for Postcard Tea's Genmaicha. Now, there's a lot more detail about this as we've looked at in part 1. I really just wanted to look at the packaging because there is a very intriguing picture, which I presume will be much larger if you buy a larger sample, a larger portion of the tea. Now, what I'm going to do is see if we can zoom in to take a look at this picture. I'll move the whole thing. This is in no way meant to suggest that people should only rely on samples, but please do go and buy the product if this looks interesting. There seems to be a young lady here who is either being swallowed by what looks like a koi, or for all I know is clambering backwards into a koi carp's mouth. Either way, I just thought it was a very intriguing picture and I wanted to show it. Likewise, if anybody's feeling familiar with my channel, you'll remember that one of the posts I put up is of the artwork for Fuji Oolong by Postcard Teas, because I really did like the aesthetic of that. And the aesthetic for this is very interesting as well. So now let's move on to part 3. So here we are looking at the tea within the sample. This is our Genmaicha. One thing I'd like to say right from the off is that as I've tipped out the entire sample, some of the very fragmentary tea leaves have landed on top of this pile. I've tried to move them around a little, but you might get the impression that the sample is composed of these fragments. It really isn't. I want to make it very clear that the majority of the product of the tea material here is intact leaves, which in and of itself is worth mentioning with respect to Japanese green tea, because some of the ways in which it's manufactured can reduce the leaves to fragments. Because this is genmaicha, along with the tea, you can see this puffed rice here. A rather pleasing colour. I didn't know whether to expect something more akin to popcorn, but you can see that this is definitely popped, and it's a lovely sort of golden brown colour. The leaves themselves are predominantly dark green with some paler green edging. So that is the tea inside our sample. On to part 3 and our tasting. Hello and welcome to part 3 of our video, our review of a tea sample. It's a Genmaicha, the first time I've actually tried one, let alone reviewed one. This is Yakushima Genmaicha from Postcard Teas. Now, the piece of paper in front of me has got some details about the tea, because just looking up about it, it did seem very interesting. So the farmer is Mr. Watanabe, who's been farming with some friends for about 15 years. The tea farm is on Yakushima Island off the coast of Kagoshima, and it's a very ecologically minded farm. It's free of the use of pesticides and mass farming. It uses a variety of green tea cultivars, including Yabukita, which we've come across before, Asatsuyu, Yuta Kamidori, and Miyoku cultivars. The tea has been light or medium steamed, so somewhere between 30 to 45 seconds, which is why we noticed in part two that the leaves are relatively intact. That's not meant as a criticism if they're not intact. It's just how they're processed, and it's a spring 2025 harvest. And the brown rice, the genmai, that's been toasted, is from Aomori Prefecture. So a fantastic amount of detail. I've had to do a little bit of guesswork here in terms of how long to brew this for. It's pre-steeped and pre-strained over here. You have to be careful with it being a green tea that it isn't oversteeped. I followed Postcard Tea's parameters of 85 degrees centigrade, 3 to 4 grams per cup. I've gone for 4 grams per cup and taken a cup to be 250 mils. So you're looking at 4 grams of tea per 250 mils. And I've steeped it for a minute. And hoping that that isn't too little, but I wanted to do too little and get at least some impression of the tea rather than over steeping it. So let's take a look. When I was brewing it, I brewed it in one of these jugs and then strained it into my teapot to keep it warm. And incidentally, any apologies to Japanese tea purists who are thinking you shouldn't be serving Japanese tea, green tea, from a teapot, but what can we do? It did have some fragments in it, which we saw, which means that there might actually be some sediment in the bottom of the teapot or the bottom of this. Just very slight. Just a little bit of residue there. Nothing of any great note. The colour is a green, slightly yellowish green. Green with some yellow tints rather than the other way around. It is slightly opaque, but that's because of the residue. It's overwhelmingly savoury, but that isn't a uniform flavour profile, scent profile. There's a toasted savouriness coming from the brown rice. And behind that, there's that umami vegetal note from the green tea. And the two go very well together. What I don't like about green tea, especially Japanese green tea, and I stress that's my own personal preference, is when you're simply confronted with that slightly sweet, heavy on the umami, heavy on the vegetal green tea. So to have that brown rice quality adds a very different dimension. So let's try the taste. It's an intense smell in a good way. Oh yeah. Very savoury from the cup. But again, very well balanced. Let's try. I'm really looking forward to this. A little bit of sweetness comes through more obviously than on the bouquet, the scent profile. The flavour is very well balanced between the two kinds of savouriness. The flavour isn't dropping off the palate as if it's understeeped. So I think a minute might be relatively okay. A slight bitterness in a good way, I think that's just from the toasted cereal. And there might be a bit of astringency from the tea. There's a certain something on the flavour. I want to take a little bit more, which is a good sign considering it's a green tea. It doesn't have a spinachy quality, so it's definitely not oversteeped in that sense. The temperature's not too high. That's spot on. But it does remind me of some kind of cooked vegetable, but only because it has a specific flavour profile, not a kind of generic vegetal quality, that kind of spinachy cooked quality. That's really, really enjoyable. Very refreshing. And the toastiness is there at the front, and the toastiness lingers along with the umami quality. It's absolutely lovely. That is absolutely lovely. So, I'm very pleasantly surprised to say that I've come across a Japanese green tea that's very appealing, and all it took was the addition of toasted brown rice. But I stress that is on me and not on the tea itself. Genmaicha is very readily available from lots of places, although, of course, given that this is a review of a tea from Postcard Teas, I would encourage any viewers to obtain it from them first, if possible. Is it easy to brew? I simply had to guess how long to steep it for. This kind of tea can, of course, be re-steeped, and there's some differences online as to how long that re-steeping should be, whether it should jump up by a minute or 2 minutes even. But there is always that risk of over-steeping it if we're not careful. But those parameters, I would say, were pretty much spot on. Still lingering. Still umami. Still brown rice. There's actually, almost a herbal quality. I think that's the thing I couldn't quite identify. I'm going to take some more. Oh yeah, that's really good. So, I know I say it very often, but without any reservations in terms of needing to qualify anything, it's another hearty recommendation. And that is a discovery for me, generally never having tried not only this genmaicha, but any genmaicha. So it's absolutely lovely. So a hearty recommendation, and happy steeping, and God bless.